Hi, I'm Stacy Andersen, also known as the Super Gene. Having lived in 9 cities across 3 continents and counting, Super Gene Unleashed features people from around the world sharing their unfiltered versions of female empowerment. With a 20-year global career in digital marketing, operating as a leader and mentor, and now as a wife and mother of 3, I encourage you to unleash your own Super Gene and become the most empowered version of yourself. Here's your advocate, ally, and confidant. I am ready to inspire you. Let's show the world what it's all about. Welcome back to another episode of Super Gene Unleashed. Today, I'm pleased to welcome Dzenana to the show. Dzenana is actually now a life coach, and she has a background in trauma healing, yoga, and Ayurvedic medicine. And her business focuses on women, actually supporting high-achieving women through deep self-discovery, emotional healing, and alignment with their true desires. They can stop living by someone else's blueprint and start creating lives that feel powerful, peaceful, and authentically theirs. Welcome, Dzenana, to the show. I mean, that just sounds like a dream statement.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for having me. And it sounds like a dream statement when you get there.
Yeah, I bet.
Painful, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, because I know that you just recently started your life coaching business, but you have had several years where you've gone through a bit of a self-discovery in terms of unlocking this new venture for yourself. Obviously, you had a long-standing career in corporate, but on the side, you were kind of pursuing a little bit of an alternative life. And now you've ultimately decided to leave that behind and go 100% into life coaching. So can you tell us a little bit about that journey?
Yeah. So I was in corporate for 20 years, pretty much most of my 20s, actually all of my 20s and all of my 30s. And, my trajectories, I wanted to be a CEO. I wanted to gun for that top role. And I went from sales into business analyst, and I went into program and product management. And I love the aspect of really bringing people together and working on projects to elevate wherever I was in the point in my career. And then I went into product management, and I fell in love with the role. It was primarily because I was facilitating the leading of a product, and I was working with a lot of analytical people that worked on the engineering side. But I was not happy. I was burning out. Yeah, I loved the job, but I knew that the impact I was having wasn't the impact that I wanted to have. And what I mean by that is I was making a change in a lot of corporations with a lot of products that I actually did love. However, it didn't feel like the impact of moving things forward for the conscious, right? For the higher realm of the people in the world. And I burned out.
So it just kind of felt like surface level work when you say doing something for the higher level consciousness. I mean, what does that even mean, actually, the higher level consciousness? What do you mean by that?
I felt like I was financially elevating organizations, but I wasn't necessarily helping individuals. And I was elevating these products to grow more money for people that already had money, right? But I wasn't helping the people that really mattered, people like myself. Right. And even though I was feeding off of that and I was living off of that money, it didn't feel like I wanted it from that perspective. And the other thing is I went through a very traumatic childhood myself. And I know what it's like to feel insecure, what it's like to be attached, what it's like to seek security because you're so afraid because you never had as a child. And so what really turned it around for me, and when I realized I wasn't happy, because I was happy for a very long time, was when I discovered the internal self and the possibility of who I could actually be. And that started for me around 33, 34, when I started to discover healing.
And I want to hear a little bit more about your traumatic youth, but I want to know what ignited the healing? Like what happened? Was it all of a sudden one day at 33, 34, you woke up and you had an aha moment? Or were you exposed to an experience that led you to this?
It was an experience that lasted 5.5 years.
Okay.
And what I mean by that, I was in a relationship And so I'm going to just take us back a little bit just so you have an idea of why this moment mattered. I grew up with a very violent father, a
Okay.
father who treated my mother very poorly, who was very abusive physically and mentally, and who had a thing for putting women down. And it was his own insecurity. And he was a narcissist. And my family calls him other things. It doesn't matter. To me, he was a narcissist with the way he would display. It was a deep sense of insecurity that he would mask with all of these toxic masculine traits.
Okay.
And so as a result, I swore to never be like my mother. And so I developed my own toxic masculine traits that I was putting out into the world against men.
What do you mean swore to never be like your mother in terms of tolerating the treatment that your father was giving to her?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good question. So my mom is this beautiful, strong, willing, loving, open soul that, it breaks my heart to think that she had the life that she had, right? I had to accept that. Like, I understand contracts and how that all evolves. But I watched her for a long time put herself second and the ability she had in order to soothe him, this little fucking boy that was just in front of us. I apologize for the word.
It's okay. We can say whatever we want.
And while I love my father and I forgive everything that has happened, because as a result, I am where I am and I'm extremely happy, just watching her was really painful for me. So I swore that I would never be putting myself in a second place like my mom was. But what happened is that need to put myself first and to make sure that I was taken care of built itself on a very toxic base because I had a horrible example, right? I swore to not be like my mother. And as a result, I absorbed my father's tendencies. And so what this led to was a lot of toxic relationships with men that I was trying to grow into this beautiful life I envisioned, but I didn't know how to get to. And so I dated a guy. I met him when I was 30 years old. And we fell madly in love. And it was the most tumultuous and the most beautiful gift the world could have ever given me. Within about a year and a half, I saw the mirror in our relationship of who I was becoming. And he gave me this platform. Yeah.
Yeah. They say that often in relationship, you attract your mirror image sometimes. And that the other person is like a mirror to expose who you are.
Yeah. And the interesting part is the mirror I attracted was my mother when I was playing my father's role.
Okay.
And I wasn't physically abusive, but I didn't know how to ask for what I wanted. So I would throw temper tantrums. I would control. I would say things to get what I want. And watching him just sit there and absorb it like she did, I recognized my father in my own actions.
Wow. That's really deep.
Mm-hmm. I started to slip into self-loathing. I started to slip into nightmares where I couldn't get out of these chains of who I was becoming. And as a result of being insecure myself at the time and caring about everything else, I started to become paralyzing to be around people who could see the truth.
So who could see the truth then? Was it your friends or could he see the truth?
Yes. But he didn't have the courage at the time to tell me. And the moments he did, I wouldn't want to hear it. And it was primarily his friends would see it, right? My friends, I would have a persona in front of them. And it's really interesting for me to talk about this so openly and it feels so freeing. But in front of his friends, they saw the person that I was. I wasn't treating him well. The love that he would express was around when we were alone because we had beautiful moments. Like my feminine would come out. But when the rage would come, it would be my father's rage. Yeah. Yeah.
And so basically this relationship was the turning point for you that led you down the voyage of self-healing. And what were some of the modalities that you used for your self-healing?
Yeah, good question. So somehow God had instilled yoga in my life when I was 24, 25, and it was like a saving grace. And I never realized the anchor I had in coming back to my body with breath. I just thought it was an exercise that I did. And so when I discovered this mirror And I didn't really know what I was looking at, right? When you initially discover something that's going on, how it's going to come in a very painful state. First, you're going to experience discomfort. Then you're going to experience denial. Then you're going to experience trauma in your body. Then you're going to experience insecurity and this depth that's coming up for you to see. And you have to choose how you want to show up. It can be a turning point for good or the bad, right? And everything is a point of view. So just remember that. And so what happened was I decided to go and do my 200-hour in yoga. I said, I need something that's going to help me get deeper into my practice because I enjoy this so much. And it was only in yoga in the 60 minutes that I discovered that I wasn't in my head, right?
Okay.
I'd gotten to a point where I was able to yoke my breath to my body. So through this 200-hour program, I decided to also start therapy. And I am Eastern European.
Yeah.
Eastern Europeans don't believe in therapy. Only wackos go to therapy. That's the thing.
That's the perception that you grew up with, huh?
Yeah, it was really silly. And it was like, to ask for help means that you're weak. To ask for help means that you can't provide for yourself and therefore you're unworthy. Right.
Wow.
And all of these trends. Yeah. But I did it anyways. There was a little girl inside of me that said, you're either going to help yourself or you're going to live your father's life. And I swore to never be like him.
Wow. What a message to receive. And definitely what a pivotal moment to experience where, I mean, thank God that you had the wherewithal to, I guess, have the state of mind to see that these were your two options and to know which option to take. Because I think, well, at least for me, I feel some of my past relationships, I felt too clouded by the emotional side of the relationship to logically make the right choices. But I guess for your situation, it's quite different because you could see your behavior. And so you went to therapy and what happened from there? What was like, I guess I would assume that this relationship didn't end up lasting.
You know, I want to pause here for a second, and I actually want to touch base on what you said, and I want to expand on your story as well, because I think it's really interesting. The way I'm speaking about the story, it sounds like there was this huge break and it just came out and it was visible to me. But I want to also stress that this relationship lasted for another 3.5 years.
Okay.
And while I chose to take action and go to yoga 200-hour, and I chose to go to therapy, the first year, it wasn't evident. I was moving through the motions of experiencing this new self that I had no clue if I liked or I wanted, but there was something inside of me that said, just keep moving. It was like this initial and intuitive knowing to just keep moving. Because what was the alternative? If I quit that, then I definitely go back to where I was. And there was something about me that says, if you want to make a change, you take the first step. When you take the first step, just follow the path. It doesn't matter, just do it. And that's kind of how I've always been, because I've had to provide for myself since I was a little girl.
Yeah, but take the first step, meaning, well, I mean, one of the pieces of advice that I, have spoken about before with other people is about following your heart. So is that a little bit what you mean by taking that first step?
Yeah.
Or just kind of trying anything to, I guess, pivot to where you were currently?
That.
Okay.
Trying something. For somebody that's not in touch with their body, for somebody that's not in touch with their intuition, for somebody that's not in touch with understanding what is it that they actually want, just doing things to try is the key.
Okay.
Because the reality is, in order to get to the place that I'm going to talk about in a little bit through Ayurveda, it takes work to understand who you are. In that moment when I was 32, 33, I had no clue what is it that I really liked, right? I was very reactive. I was living in a space of a lot of background trauma, and I didn't really know how to show up for the things that were happening. I was just reacting based on the triggers that I had. And so to say moving from the heart, I would say I was moving from my lights to know that I needed to move forward.
Okay.
But I had no clue if what I was doing was right. But honestly, it doesn't matter. The one thing that I always tell the women that I work with, it's not about the right thing. You cannot make a mistake as long as you're taking the step.
That's such a powerful piece of advice, because I can think at so many junctures in my life, I've completely belabored over wanting to do the right thing that now, honestly, you have me sat here thinking like, what decision did I not make because I was too afraid that, I was going to take the wrong way. But maybe had I, chosen to move forward, as you said, just taken any step, maybe things would be different. And of course, I mean, that's not the best perspective because I think you're probably a big believer of like that you take the course and that's the course that you're supposed to be on, irrespective of this, I guess, second guessing.
Yeah. I'm going to speak from a woman's perspective. And you said it so well. We second guess ourselves and we get into analysis paralysis. And what does that mean? And we overthink everything. And then as a result, we never take the next step. And so then what happens is you actually end up being stuck where you are. And, I can only speak from a woman's perspective. We as women have been taught to be cautious. We as women have been taught to be caretakers. We as women have been taught that we need to seek security, not take risks. And so what now we as women do, we overanalyze everything that we do. How many men that are really successful think about the things that they're actually doing instead of just screw it, I'm going to just do it?
They probably just do it, I would guess.
That is exactly what they're doing. And so I had to get to that place. And I do have an impulsive nature that I was given by God, by my father. It's a beautiful thing. But that impulsive nature can also lead you other paths if you don't direct your energy into the right position. I will say this, and something that you had mentioned is, as long as you're moving forward and following the intuition that you know to be right? It doesn't have to be very strong, just to be right. You cannot make a mistake. And I always tell women like that work with me is one of the things that I focus on is like the first thing I look at is their routine throughout the day. Because if I cannot get through their bodies to physically heal their vessel, I will not be able to regulate their nervous system in order to get them to think without clouds in their head. And you used that word. You said I was so clouded in these relationships.
Yeah, but even as well throughout like some career decisions too, like there, of course, have been moments where I've wanted to do my own thing but yet it was too scary to take that leap, as you said, take that risk. And the comment that you made about security, I think is also true. I mean, I've also been a very independent person. So I haven't necessarily had anyone to fall back on, nor did I want anyone to fall back on. But, with you, for instance, it sounds like you have been able to navigate around those thoughts in order to take the risk.
Yeah. And remember, it took a year for me to just understand what I was even getting into, right? The healing process that started when I was 33 was just me thinking that I was doing mild self-help and that it was going to just adjust my trajectory enough for me to be happy, right? For me not to have self-loathing, for me not to be the person that I never wanted to be, which was my dad. Little did I know that I was on the path, the small little step of a decision on the path of changing my entire life. And how beautiful it turned out. And it's still yet to turn out. Like, we'll talk about where I'm going, but the one thing I always say to women, just take the next step. Just take that first step forward. It doesn't matter if it's right. If there is an urge, follow your intuition. That is your first inkling that your light is coming through. Literally.
That's really a beautiful piece of advice because I definitely have felt that. But you said something interesting as well about learning about the woman's routine. Mm-hmm. What does a routine tell you, though? I mean, for me personally, I would say my routine is pretty monotonous. I'm a mom and I basically, wake up, work out, get ready, go to work, come home, have about an hour with my daughter, put her to bed, have dinner, and then hit repeat.
Yeah. Let me give you the background of how I got to Ayurveda, and then I will touch on that routine, but it will speak to that. So, through yoga and therapy, it was like interesting. We actually got kicked out of the therapist's office. And
Who's
that's how
we?
him and I. So I started
Oh,
to go
you
to
went
therapy.
to therapy together.
No, apart.
Oh,
And
apart.
I begged him to seek help. He didn't want to access his inner child. He couldn't look at his inner child and heal. He felt too vulnerable. And honestly, the space he was in with me, I don't blame him. So I encouraged him to come with me. And this was the pinnacle that changed everything for me. We ended up going to therapy and we got kicked out of the therapist's office. And I remember I stayed for an extra year after that, but I knew that day in the car driving home, it's over.
With him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's over. It took another year to recognize.
Wow.
And that was my intuition. Yeah. So I'm with this male and I leave him I was with him for another 2.5 years after that, or 3. Who's doing the math? It doesn't matter. I left.
Yeah.
I'm 35. For the next year, I dipped into this self-discovery, but through a very unhealthy pattern of alcohol.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I remember I went on a group trip from all of our Chicago friends that we have mutually to Mexico. And I remember I was like, I'm not drinking on this trip. I made this revelation. And of course, because I was trying to stop drinking. And so I would go through these volatile situations where I would not drink, but then because I wouldn't drink, I would have so much the next time. I found myself in like these blackout situations.
Wow.
And there was something that happened on that trip that really woke me up. I put myself in a very tricky, unsafe situation.
Okay.
That shook me from the core.
Wow.
And I came back and I vow to make another change. I took the next step. And so I was like, I'm going to go do my 300 hour since my 200 hour made such a beautiful impact. And it was wild because of that 200 hour therapy, going on the trip and knowing that when an inkling shows up, I just need to follow. It doesn't matter what it is. I can't make a mistake. I decided to focus on Ayurveda. So we can speak a whole hour on Ayurveda another time, but Ayurveda is actually where yoga comes from. It's the yoga of India, right? And so in Ayurveda, you learn 5 pillars. You learn routine, which is what I will touch on next, nutrition, yoga, which is actually asana. It's the movement, which is the only part we mostly learn here in the West. You have breath work and meditation. And so instead of going down the traditional route of the 300 hour to get my 500 hour IRT, I wanted to focus on Ayurveda, which encompassed all 5. And through that, I gave up alcohol and I recognized where the imbalance in my body sat that would pull me out of these moments of clarity. Right. And so I worked from about 36 from the inside of my body out. And through routine, what I mean by that is you can actually heal your body enough to be able to stay in the calmness of your nervous system to understand when intuition is coming through, to listen, to learn to. Mm-hmm. And the mantra that I use with my clients is, I'm teaching you how to come back home to yourself.
I'm teaching you how to come back home with yourself.
To yourself.
To yourself. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And what I mean by that is you cannot, this is my perspective, you cannot reach a space where you envision yourself being the best version of yourself unless you treat your vessel, your body, in a way where it can show up for you to be there. Because you have to remember, we're experiencing this life as a spirit in this vessel. And so the vessel has to be clean. And are there people who have experienced this in other perspectives? Yes. But for me, this is how I learned. And so coming back to the routine aspect, what are you drinking first thing in the morning? You said, I'm a mom, my life is mundane, but you mentioned some very beautiful things you do in a daily routine already. You said, I wake up, I take care of the kids, I work out.
Yeah.
So there's an inkling to take care of yourself right away.
Yeah, that's what I usually do first, because that's what makes me feel the best. And I'm always drinking water first thing in the morning, sometimes electrolytes.
Yeah. And so one of the things that we do in my group coaching program and even one-on-one container is I will first access the mind and understand and seek to feel where the woman is within herself currently. And what I mean by that is, how does she feel about herself? And what are the stories that she's holding without understanding or knowing that they're there, to see and bring light to what she could move out of the way, right? So we all have beliefs and stories that we have within ourselves that have been running us on this cycle of repeating the patterns over and over.
Is that like part of what I hear, that sometimes people are continuing to attract the same thing because they haven't learned the lesson?
Yes, that's exactly what it is. Yeah. And so, a lot of words that people use is manifesting abundance, but a lot of these words are so far off to an average woman, because who has time to learn to manifest, because it sounds so woo-woo magic, right?
Yeah.
But the reality is, all manifestation means is you attract what you think. That's it. That's manifestation.
Yeah, but there's some people out there where it's like, well, I want to be rich, but manifestation doesn't necessarily work that way. Or I've heard, different famous people in this kind of field talk about manifestation and abundance, and a lot of the things that they say, it's been a bit, I guess, meaningless, because I feel like they're in such a successful state that I have a hard time associating with it. And there's also often a lot of steps that are difficult, to put into my routine, because I don't have a lot of time. One thing I wanted to ask as well is that you only focus on women, and I'm curious to know why you only focus on women. But how do you help a woman who is so busy and can't slot in some kind of, do you really give good options for breaking it down so that it's something manageable?
Yeah, Stacy, you said something about a second ago. It's not what you want, it's what you believe that manifests. Okay. And so what I mean by that, a lot of people think, if I want this enough, if I attach myself enough to this thing that I envision, it's going to come true. But the truth of manifesting comes from what you believe. And so if you believe you're too busy to take care of yourself, you're not going to find the time, because you're finding time for all these other things that you think are more important. And so the way I look at it is, I have them basically look at their entire day, and then I have them look at what are they prioritizing. And when we look at what they're prioritizing, we look at the belief of why they feel they need to do that. And then I ask them, what would you rather be doing? And what is it that you would rather want to have as a result of what you're doing? And so when you can look at what you're doing, why you're doing it, and then where you are and how far you are from your result, you start to notice the things that no longer serve you, right? And so I'll give you an example. A woman wakes up in the morning, and the first thing she has is a cup of coffee, because she needs energy, and that's what she has, and she's always needed that, and she knows she's going to crash, so she believes that she can't survive unless she has this cup of coffee. And so my challenge now with her is to understand, what is she doing throughout the day to feel that she needs all of this energy, and where is she crashing and taking away from her energy to have this constant cycle of putting her nervous system and her entire adrenals in shock. That is it is so shocking and hurtful to the body to do that first thing in the morning.
To have a cup of coffee
before you eat. And to have a cup of coffee, I love coffee. I just want to stress this out.
Me too.
I don't drink coffee, but it has its place. But whenever you do something in your life, you have to think about why you're doing it. And so if you're drinking coffee because you enjoy the taste and it brings you joy, versus drinking coffee because you need energy and you're attached to it, those are two different needs.
Yeah, that's very true.
Why you're doing what you're doing. And so, yes, it doesn't matter who you are, how busy you are. When we look at the routine, we look at what you're doing, why you're doing it, what your belief is around what you think it's bringing you, and then slowly adjusting. And, it takes time. Like, I started studying Ayurveda when I was 36. I'm 41. Okay. And so it took about 2 years to heal my gut. And now you have to remember, when I was doing it, I had no guide. I was in school, so I was trying everything. It was like a hodgepodge. It was like literally like a 3-year-old in an artist studio trying to do a masterpiece. It was that messy. And so now that I have done what I've had to do to myself, I take out the things that I know that worked and then I slowly implement them and help
with your
mold.
clients.
Yeah. So you get, 5 years worth of knowledge. I usually start with the 3-month package first, see how they feel. And it never ends at 3 months, because once you start to discover who you are and how beautiful you are and where you want to be, it just evolves in this continuous want to keep nurturing yourself, to keep learning.
That sounds incredibly inspiring. I probably could use something like this in my life. But back to the question that I asked about women, why do you only focus on women?
That's a really good question. And it's something that I've actually been sitting on for the last 3 or 4 days. And the reason why it's interesting that you chose to ask me this wasn't even part of the plan when we and I initially talked, but it seems like the universe is asking me to think about this. I initially wanted to work with women because being a woman myself, I feel that helping women helps elevate the feminine that I have been trying to elevate my entire life through a very toxic masculine. And I specifically want to work with women that were in the state of like I was. They were high achieving. They had a 6-figure job. They had the house, the life, the events, the friends, they were traveling, but they still felt like there was something missing. And there was an inkling of a slight self-loathing, right?
Yeah.
And they were masking it with this masculine of production, of having everything that they felt made them look good. And so women were my first target. However, I have recognized that in my life, I have actually accessed and helped a lot of men through friendships, right? Men that just been attracted to me, to just want to be in the area of understanding how I think, and then giving me the vulnerability because they didn't feel safe with other men. So in this moment right now, I target women because it's really a passion. However, my mantra when I first started this work was I want to be the Tony Robbins for women. That's what I want to do. I want to be the Tony Robbins.
I really love that ambition. I mean, have you had men come to you and want to try to work with you?
Not as a client, but I have worked with a lot of men from a perspective of just being in my life. And I actually just got a beautiful review from a male, really close male friend that I have been working with in the last year. Not in a session, like he's never come to me and said, okay, we're in a session, but he's always been in sessions. Whenever we're together, we dig deep into his life and he's discovered these revelations. And there's a part of me that's curious about, should I perhaps open this container to access men who have the same inkling but are more comfortable speaking to a woman. So I don't know. I'm open. I've also
I guess you'll see where it leads you, but maybe someone will contact you. Maybe a man will contact you, and you'll just take the step, which is what you said earlier. Is one of your biggest pieces of advice is to take that first step.
Yeah. And in learning to listen to the universe, right? I don't believe that the universe makes any mistakes.
Okay.
And I know that's really hard to hear for people that have had a lot of shit happen in their life, you know, and think about wars and abuse and all the things that could even happen to kids. I don't believe that the universe makes a mistake.
But you went through all of that, didn't you? What did you go through when you were young? I mean, I think it would be really, good to share that if you don't mind.
Definitely. So I was born and raised in Bosnia, and I was initially born to a very violent father who was, like I said, physically and mentally abusive on all ends to all three of us, my brother, my mom, and I. And he was like this beloved individual who was really sought out in the community because he was so well known and well off. But behind closed doors, he was literally like the monster that would come out of the closet, but he was constantly there.
Oh my goodness. I never knew that. So complete Jekyll and Hyde.
Complete. And so much so that I actually wet the bed until I was 9. And what was interesting is my mom would seek all of these doctors and holistic healers to try to see what was wrong with me, never connecting the dots that the 3 a.m. gravel grinding of the tires when my father would pull up hammered out of his mind, coming inside, picking a fight with her and then beating her to a pulp in front of us and then going after my brother. And, I'll remember, I I don't think I brought this to you, but I have another conversation with a friend to also have just like a life story podcast. And one of the things that I remembered is I wrote an essay for colleges when I was 17 that I still haven't opened and read because of how much memory is in that.
My
And
goodness.
there's this one situation where I think I was 3 or 4 and I slept in the crib in my parents' room and they suddenly got out of bed, started yelling. My mom swooped me out of the crib and she's holding my feet, just cupping them while he's beating her with a belt buckle all over her legs and knees and begging him to stop. And I remember just watching him and I believe in energy and I'm very energetic and I can feel that. And I remember just soaking that up and I can't even imagine what that did to my gut and my hips because that's the place where you store that creativity.
Well, being a relatively new mom, my daughter is too, and they say that kids have this innate ability to really absorb energy. And it even starts in the womb, for instance, because they can hear, they recognize your voice.
Yes.
I mean, that's wild that you remember something from that young.
I remember younger than that, Stacy. And I think you and I will actually have an episode around plant medicine, but I started absorbing the abuse in my mother's womb. And through plant medicine, I was able to access memories. And even I had a near-death experience when I was 19, we can touch on in a little bit. But there's memories of this really tumultuous childhood. And to be honest, I don't think I was ever a child. I think that I was born and expected to behave as an adult and really soothe myself because my mother didn't have the space to soothe us. She didn't have the space to be the beautiful mother that she had the heart for because she was so set in this like nervous wrecking state where she just had to be on alert consistently. Like he controlled her. And so, long story short, that happened until I was about 7.5. That was the childhood, the beginning, the formation, the example.
Yeah.
That was the love that I knew. And then the war started.
Crazy. Yeah.
To put the cherry on top, the war started. But here's the fucked up part. The war was actually a reprieve of my father. And what I mean by that, when the war started, my father got busy with the war because he had to. And so we were actually like right on the front lines because there was fighting everywhere, but we were on the border of Croatia. It's called Velika Kladuša. And there was a situation where Bosnia had split in two and was fighting itself. And then there was the Croats and the Serbs. And anyways, we ended up in a camp. So we were on the front lines about 1 mile to 2 miles from the actual fighting. So from the age of 8
like in a tent, you mean, when you say a camp?
Yeah. And there's actually a documentary. I'll send it to you.
Yeah. So you had to leave your house.
Mm-hmm. So from the age of 8 to 9, the war started. We were about 1 mile to 2 miles from the fighting. And so for 4 years, we were in this space, or that I remember, where bombs were just going over our head. And we were literally like, there was a curfew. School was pretty much out most of that time and you had to hide. But there was a moment when I was about 9.5, where we had to evacuate for a season and live in these chicken factories and tents in this camp, right? They call it a refugee camp, but let me tell you, there was no refugee camp there. So that was, up until the age of 12, I had this father thing and then I had the war.
Yeah. I mean, those are extremely intense events to experience as a child. I mean, I'm really just like blown away to hear how eloquent you speak now and how you're able to sit here now today and be grateful for having had these experiences and that you wholeheartedly know in the depths of your being that these were necessary for you to become who you are today.
Stacy, something you have to understand about trauma is when you are living a life, that becomes the norm. When you are,
I can see that.
Yeah. And so I didn't know any different. I didn't know that you could have a home that was safe. I didn't know that you could have parents that got along and would hug you, because with my father, you never know if you were getting a fist to the face or a hug. right? I didn't know that you could live a life where you didn't have to run out of the house for 30 minutes of peace with your friends before you had to go home and urinate in bed. That was my life. And to me, that was normal. And
yeah, it's so true. You just triggered a memory in my head that when I was living in New York, I saw a speaker. It was a woman who actually fled North Korea, I think with her child. And she was on stage and she was telling us along the lines of what exactly you're saying, where, someone had actually asked her once she escaped what her favorite color was. And she couldn't even answer it because they apparently weren't even taught. I mean, they couldn't be a free thinker. So, something as simple as that, I think, is also a really good conjecture to draw to what you just said about trauma, that you really didn't know another way. So you thought this was the way.
I didn't necessarily think about other ways. And I didn't necessarily think this was the way. This was it.
Yeah.
This was my reality. This was what life was like. This is what you get served. This is what you go through. And so, I do want to highlight, I am really grateful for everything I've experienced. There's not a moment in my life that I would want to change. There's not a moment I used to in my 20s wish that I could have had the life like the American girls had, that I thought was the ideal space to be. I was angry for a very long time at my father for not showing me a safe masculine. And I was so angry because I kept attracting these cycles of vicious breakups and volatile in connection that wasn't love. It was very wounded. And now I'm in a space of gratitude, and I see the value, not that I would wish this upon anybody or wish for anybody to go through this to get to where I am. But what I'm trying to say is when you stop living in the past and you stop being anchored in this anger and anxiety around what happened and as a result of who you are now because you might not like yourself, that's what I want to help women heal.
Yeah, but I think that's such an important message that, there are plenty of other women out there that are facing traumas. And, you just said, I don't wish this upon anybody else. However, you are such an inspirational showcase to women who might be in something this very moment and that might even be listening right now. You are giving a message that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. There is a way onto the other side, and that it is possible to reach a point where you don't resent the past, where you don't, hang on to that, because I can imagine that another part of the healing would be, it would be necessary for if someone went through a trauma like this or is in a trauma currently, that for them to fully heal, they have to be able to let go of that and not hang on to it.
Yes, but that is easier said than done.
Of course.
The real power is in the choice. The real power is in the first step and the choice you make towards the life that you want. Is healing and letting go as easy as I speak? Fuck no. However, I made the choice to get there. And the way I made the choice was to take the first step and trust that I can get there. And so it was messy. It was hard. It was painful. It took me a long time to forgive my father. It took me a long time to forgive my mother. And I'm still moving through some of those things. Like,
are you still in contact with them?
Oh yeah, of course. My dad passed 4 years ago, and I know I'm really close with my mom. Like, the thing about Eastern Europeans, we don't leave the nest.
Yeah.
Meaning, like, you don't get to separate. And that's another thing. Like, I think that's also a toxic trait. I did separate physically. I moved states far away to be able to start the healing. I needed that distance because they always had this inkling to control these claws. And honestly, that's a story for another day.
Yeah, of course. I think that we're about ready to wrap it up because I know that we're going to have another session. But I really wanted to ask you, if you can share a piece of advice that you would give to a woman who like really can't take that first step. Like, I mean, you keep saying how that's the most important thing to do, but how, like, what are some of the encouragement points that can enable someone to do that?
Yeah. The way it truly started for me is when I started to take 5 minutes a day for myself, just to pause, right? Women that believe that they don't have the courage, start with 5 minutes a day of just listening to your inner self. Start with doing anything that helps you nurture your body or your mind. It could be simple. It could be a minute a day. It could be the first water you drink in the morning. Just something that tells your soul and the universe, I am ready and I need help. I am ready and I need help to just take the first step that I need to take, and something will start to shift. However, I will also say that if you see that you want to do something and you consistently refuse, there's a lesson in that too. Ask yourself, why am I refusing to help myself? Why am I refusing to look at this? Why am I choosing to keep hurting? There's a lesson in that. And so if you can take the step toward nurturing, sit with the step of why you're doing it and be honest and radical with yourself. And then get help.
Yeah.
Like, get help. Like, there's books, there's people. I'm here. Like, get help. It's not far if you want it.
That's true. I think now more than ever, there's a greater accessibility, but I still think that, you know, it can be tough to take that first step. But I really love what you said with taking 5 minutes. And if for some reason you truly can't, then stop and look at that as a sign too, and see why. And I really appreciate so much everything that you've shared today. I also really love your mantra. I am teaching you how to come back home to yourself. So please, if you can tell everybody, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah. So I have an Instagram. If you're on there, it's Coach Dzenana. So it's Coach in my first name. And all of my links are on there. But if you are not on the socials, and I respect that, it's holisticlighthealing.com. And you can find all of the information there. And if nothing, comment on this podcast.
Yeah.
And I will be looking out, and I'll give you all the links. But the choice is the power. And when you choose to take the first step, that's really what's going to change everything for you.
Goodness. Thank you so much. I truly appreciate it. I feel healed. And I really can't wait to talk to you again. Thank you, Dzenana, for coming on today.
Of course. Thank you for having me, Stacy. We'll talk later.
Thank you so much for tuning in today, and I hope you feel empowered from the episode. You can connect with me at supergeneunleashed.com and on Instagram at supergeneunleashed. Please share your thoughts, and I look forward to connecting with you. And until next time, keep on shining and showing the world your super gene.